husband was really ill, I came home from college and walked into the lounge room to check on him. And when I walked in, there was a huge angel standing behind his chair with her wings draped around him as if she were comforting him. He was asleep, but she was so huge and so real that I actually was a bit embarrassed and said, "Oh, excuse me," and walked out of the lounge room. And then I thought about it and thought, this is my lounge room, so I can walk back in if I want to. And so I walked in, and then I really stood there and looked at this beautiful angel, and, you know, the room was just full of light, and it was so peaceful and so lovely, and I felt as if she was communicating with me, not talking words, but just as if we were having a conversation, and I felt that she was telling me that my husband was safe and that she and possibly the other angels were looking after him and that they would take care of him, and that made me feel wonderful. I just felt, you know, very relaxed about that. So then I walked out of the room, and when I went back later, about half an hour later or so, she was gone. And about 2 weeks later, my husband died.
I started to walk down an incline, and I could see in front of me a black hole which appeared. It was the beginning of an area known as the Bullring, and it was underneath the roundabout going towards Waterloo Station, where a lot of people congregate in order to live, their cardboard city. I looked and I thought, oh my God, and that is when I saw her. She was quite tall, her hair was in a page boy style. She had a coat on that was fitted in at the waist, and she had flat shoes. I could see her quite clearly, and she was standing, and she had her head inclined to the side, and it was as though she was waiting for me. My first instinct was, oh, thank God, another woman, safety in numbers, and I hurried to catch her up, so that I was roughly 6 paces behind her. She started to move off, I followed her. We went through the Bullring. We could hear our feet crunching on the gravel and the bits and pieces, the debris. There was people in double bunks, all sorts. This lady just carried on walking. I was right behind her. If she'd stopped and turned, she would have touched me. No one stopped us at all. It was as though we didn't exist. They looked at us and looked through us. It was unbelievable. I heard her feet walking up the steps. I got onto the steps, turned to my left, expecting to see her in front of me, and it was completely empty. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. She was only 6 paces in front of me. I could have touched her, and she completely disappeared.
I began to look into other cultures. They spoke volumes to me, and Christianity has never done. I don't feel very comfortable in churches, never have done. They're repressive. They tell me what I can and can't believe. I'm not having that. I know people who say to me, I can't cope with your angels. They are not white and Catholic. I say, no, they are not. And they are not owned. They just flow by me, through me, to me, at me.
You see, George, you really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away? Clarence. Yes, George?
Help me, Clarence! Get me back! Get me back! I don't care what happens to me!
We are spiritual beings. We do want to know that we're not alone. And I think reassurance in this day and age is very important. And I think this is why angels are appearing now, They're filling the spiritual gap. They're reassuring people. And it's the backlash from all the modern materialism, commercialism that's happening in the world today.
Look, Daddy, look at this. Every time look that way, and I do the big wings.
That's right. That's right. That's a boy, Fran.
There are some very spectacular occurrences over the years. For instance, the Angel of Mons, where literally hundreds of soldiers apparently saw the angels in the sky. And even though over the years it has been discredited by skeptics and various peoples, some of the accounts are so dramatic and so accurate that you have to believe something happened on that night.
My father won the military medal during that battle. How he won it, I will never know, because he said it was too terrible to talk about. There were about 60,000 went out to this battle, and he said we were down to about 30,000. He said, I cannot give you exact figures, but he said we're more than half left. And the battle was getting impossible because the Germans had much bigger and better equipment than what we had to fight with. And he said, never experienced it like it. He said they were dropping down like flies. And all of a sudden, it was an eerie sound. There was a white light across the hill, and all of a sudden they saw these shrouds on horses riding right across the top of the hill. The Germans fired for a while, and all of a sudden they gave up. He said, never seen that anybody runs so fast as the last of these Germans over the hill. And he said, we were all inspired, he said, and we all looked up. He said, some of us were religious, some weren't, he said, but this is why he said to me, always be a Christian and always believe in the Lord, he said, because he saved us that day through his angels. And from then on, we went right through and we won the First World War.
March 1981, I went down to the Lido Baths in Droitwich with my wife and 9-year-old son, and I couldn't swim.
We went into the baths, and me and my son jumped into the shallow end, and my wife sat on the edge of the bath. And after a while, I ventured into the deep end. I wasn't concerned all that much because the deep end's only 6 foot deep, and I'm 5'11", so I didn't think I'd get in any sort of danger. However, once I got into the deep end, I realized because of the weight of the water that I couldn't go and move, and I slipped and fell on the floor of the bath.
I was under there for about 2 minutes, and during that time, I tried to breathe, and of course I took in some water into my lungs, and the pain was quite horrific. I realized in the next few seconds that I was going to die, and at that point, I saw my grandmother come floating towards me. My grandmother had been dead at this point for about 16 years. She floated towards me with her arms outstretched, I can see her now. And she had on a sort of silk gown that just sort of wafted in the water. Her hands went underneath me, and my head started banging against the floor of the bath. When I looked up, I could see my son had got hold of my hair, and he was slowly banging my head, trying to lift me up. I'm 14.5 stone, and my son's slightly built, and he was only 9 years old. I don't think there's any way he could have possibly pulled me up through the water. But nonetheless, with him pulling my hair and my guardian angel, my grandmother, lifting me up, I magically rose through the water. I just rose up.
I think I can say everybody's had an experience that has changed their life somewhat. A lot of people, it's been a very dramatic life change. Other people, it's just been a gentle nudge that there's someone there looking after them. People are realizing they can sit with other like-minded people and talk about these spiritual experiences and not being laughed at and not be perceived as a nut, which is a common concept. And these people aren't nuts. Sure, there's a few, but not all of them. Not the majority. They're normal, everyday people.